What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars sits down for what should be a routine interview and it turns into an absolute explosion of tension that nobody saw coming? Leonardo DiCaprio walked onto the View set, expecting to discuss his latest environmental documentary, but what unfolded instead was a verbal showdown that had the audience gasping, the co-hosts frozen in shock, and social media absolutely losing its mind. Before we get into exactly what was said that made Leo completely lose his composure, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on in this unbelievable clash. The interview started normally enough. Joy Behar opened with her trademark energy, welcoming Leonardo to the show with the kind of enthusiasm you would expect for an A-list guest. The audience applauded, the other co-hosts smiled, and Leo took his seat with that familiar calm demeanor he always brings to interviews. Whoopi Goldberg asked the first question about his new documentary project focusing on ocean conservation, and Leo responded with genuine passion, talking about the urgency of protecting marine ecosystems and how this project had been years in the making. Everything seemed perfectly fine. Sunny Hostin chimed in with a question about the filmmaking process, and Leo answered thoughtfully, describing the challenges of capturing underwater footage and working with marine biologists. The conversation flowed smoothly for those first few minutes. Then Joy Behar decided to shift gears. She leaned forward, with that look she gets when she is about to say something she thinks is clever, and she said, "Leo, we all know you care about the environment. You talk about it constantly. But I have to ask, and I think a lot of people wonder this, how do you reconcile flying around on private jets and yachts while telling regular Americans they need to cut back on their carbon footprint? Doesn't that seem just a little bit hypocritical?" The energy in the studio changed instantly. You could feel it. The audience went quiet. The other co-hosts exchanged quick glances. Leo's expression shifted slightly, but he maintained his composure. He took a breath and said, "Joy, I think that is a fair question on the surface, but it misses the bigger picture. Yes, I use air travel. Yes, my work requires me to travel extensively. But I also carbon offset every single flight. I invest millions of dollars into renewable energy projects, and I use whatever platform I have to push for systemic change. Individual carbon footprints matter, but they pale in comparison to what corporations and governments do. That is where the real change needs to happen." Joy was not satisfied with that answer. She shook her head and said, "But Leo, come on. You cannot tell people to make sacrifices while you live in luxury. You own multiple homes. You vacation on super yachts with models. You are not exactly living like a monk. And then you lecture the rest of us about climate change? Do you see why people might roll their eyes at that?" Leo's jaw tightened just slightly. His voice remained controlled, but there was an edge to it now. "Joy, I have never told anyone to live like a monk. What I have said, repeatedly, is that we need policy changes. We need governments to hold corporations accountable. We need investment in green technology. My personal lifestyle is scrutinized because I am famous, but let me be very clear. I have done more for environmental causes than most people could do in 10 lifetimes. I have donated over $100 million to conservation efforts. I sit on the boards of multiple environmental organizations. I produce documentaries that raise awareness. So, yes, I live comfortably, but I also put my money and my time where my mouth is." The audience started to murmur. Some people clapped. Joy held up her hand and said, Okay, but Leo, you have to admit there is something off about a millionaire celebrity telling working-class families they need to worry about their carbon footprint when you probably produce more emissions in a month than they do in a year. That is just reality." Leo leaned forward now, his voice getting firmer. "Joy, that is actually not reality. That is a narrative, and it is a dangerous one because it distracts from the real issue. Do you know who loves when people focus on celebrity hypocrisy? Oil companies, coal companies, the politicians they fund. Because as long as everyone is talking about my jet, they are not talking about the fact that 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. They are not talking about government subsidies for fossil fuels. They are not talking about deregulation. So forgive me if I find this line of questioning a little convenient. Joy's eyes widened. She clearly had not expected Leo to push back this hard. She said, "Convenient? I am asking you a legitimate question that viewers want answered. You are a public figure who campaigns on this issue. Your lifestyle is relevant." Leo did not back down. "My lifestyle is relevant, but it is not the story. The story is that we are running out of time. The story is that entire ecosystems are collapsing. The story is that coastal cities will be underwater in our lifetimes if we do not act now. But instead of talking about solutions, you want to talk about whether I flew commercial or private last week. That is what I find frustrating." Whoopi tried to jump in to smooth things over. She said, "Leo, I think what Joy is getting at is just that people want to see consistency. They want to know that the people advocating for change are also making changes themselves." Leo turned to Whoopi and said, "And I am. But the standard I am held to is impossible. If I fly commercial, I am criticized for taking up space and causing disruptions. If I fly private, I am a hypocrite. If I own one home, I am out of touch. If I sell my homes, I am performative. There is no winning." Meanwhile, billionaires who do nothing for the environment, who actively fund climate denial, they get a pass because they are not talking about it publicly. The hypocrisy is not on my end. Joy jumped back in, her voice rising slightly. "Leo, nobody is giving billionaires a pass, but you put yourself out there as the face of environmentalism. You made that choice. So yes, you are going to be scrutinized. That comes with the territory." Leo's response was sharp. "I put myself out there because somebody has to. Because if people like me, who have platforms, stay silent, then nothing changes. I would rather be called a hypocrite and actually make a difference than stay quiet and let the planet burn. At least I am trying." "What are you doing, Joy? Are you carbon neutral? Do you donate to environmental causes? Or are you just here to score points by tearing down someone who is actually working on solutions?" The studio went dead silent. The other co-hosts looked stunned. Joy's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The audience did not know whether to gasp or clap. Sunny Hostin looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Alyssa Farah Griffin stared straight ahead, clearly unsure how to react. This had escalated far beyond a typical daytime television disagreement. This was personal now. Joy finally found her voice. She said, her tone defensive, "I recycle. I try to be conscious. But I am not the one on television telling people how to live their lives." Leo shook his head. "Neither am I, Joy. I am telling governments and corporations how to do their jobs. There is a difference. But you are framing it as me lecturing regular people, and that is just not true. I have never once said that individual actions do not matter, but they matter a lot less than systemic change. And the fact that we are sitting here arguing about my travel habits instead of talking about the actual content of my documentary, which exposes illegal fishing practices that are decimating ocean life, that proves my point exactly." Joy was not ready to let it go. She said, "Your documentary is important, Leo. Nobody is denying that. But you cannot separate the message from the messenger. If the messenger has credibility issues, the message suffers. That is just how it works." Leo's voice dropped lower, more intense. "So you are saying I have credibility issues? Based on what? Based on the fact that I am successful? Based on the fact that I have not given away every dollar I have ever made and moved into a cave? What exactly would make me credible enough for you, Joy?" The tension was suffocating now. Joy stammered slightly. I am not saying you have to live in a cave, Leo. I am just saying there is a disconnect between your advocacy and your lifestyle that people notice." Leo cut her off. People notice because people like you keep pointing it out. You are creating the disconnect. You are feeding into a narrative that benefits the very industries I am fighting against. And whether you realize it or not, that makes you part of the problem. Joy's face went from flushed to visibly angry. She sat up straighter and said, "Part of the problem? Excuse me? I have been advocating for progressive causes my entire career. I have been speaking out about climate change for years. How dare you sit here and tell me I am part of the problem because I asked you a question that millions of Americans are thinking?" Leo did not flinch. His voice was steady but forceful. "You have been speaking out about climate change, but right now, in this moment, you are doing exactly what fossil fuel companies want. You are making this about individual lifestyle choices instead of corporate accountability. You are attacking someone who is on your side instead of focusing on the real villains. That is what I mean by being part of the problem. You are letting them win." Joy threw her hands up. "So anyone who questions you is letting fossil fuel companies win? That is absurd, Leo. That is not how accountability works. You do not get to be above criticism just because you donate money." Leo leaned forward even more, his intensity building. "I am not above criticism, Joy. Criticize my documentaries if they are factually wrong. Criticize my foundation if it is not transparent. Criticize my advocacy if I am pushing bad policy. But do not criticize me for existing as a human being who uses modern transportation while trying to make that transportation cleaner for everyone. That is a distraction, and you are smart enough to know it." Whoopi tried again to intervene. "All right, let's take a breath here. I think we are all on the same side when it comes to wanting a healthier planet. Maybe we are just coming at it from different angles." But Joy was not ready to move on. She looked at Whoopi and said, "No, I want to finish this. Leo just accused me of helping fossil fuel companies, and I want him to explain that." She turned back to Leo. "You are sitting here acting like you are some kind of martyr for the environment. You are not. You are an actor who made a lot of money and now you feel guilty about it. So you throw money at causes and make documentaries and expect everyone to applaud you for it. But when someone asks a tough question, you get defensive and start attacking." Leo's composure finally cracked. His voice rose for the first time. "A tough question? Joy, you did not ask me a tough question. You asked me a gotcha question designed to make me look bad. A tough question would be, what policy changes do you think are most urgent? Or what are the biggest obstacles to passing climate legislation? Or how do we get developing nations on board with emissions targets? Those are tough questions. What you asked was tabloid garbage dressed up as journalism." The audience gasped audibly. Sunny Hostin put her hand over her mouth. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. Joy's mouth fell open. She said, her voice shaking slightly with anger, "Tabloid garbage? You are calling my question tabloid garbage on national television?" Leo did not apologize. "Yes, I am, because that is what it was. You did not want to have a serious conversation about climate change. You wanted to take a shot at a celebrity and hope it went viral. Well, congratulations, it probably will. But you know what will not go viral? The actual substance of what I am trying to talk about. The fact that industrial fishing fleets are destroying ocean ecosystems. The fact that governments are subsidizing the very industries that are killing the planet. That will not trend on social media because it is not entertaining enough." Joy was furious now. "You know what, Leo? You are incredibly arrogant. You come on this show, you insult me. You insult our audience by implying they are too stupid to care about real issues, and you act like you are the only person who understands what is happening to the planet. Newsflash. We all know what is happening. We all care. But we also care about hypocrisy. And you reek of it." Leo stood up from his chair. Not to leave, but to emphasize his point. He looked directly at Joy and said, "I do not reek of hypocrisy, Joy. I reek of effort. I reek of actually doing something instead of just talking about it. You want to call me arrogant? Fine. But at least I am using my arrogance to try to save something. What are you using yours for? To boost ratings? The other co-hosts were paralyzed. Nobody knew what to say. The audience was completely silent now, every single person riveted by what was unfolding. This had gone so far beyond a normal interview disagreement that there was no roadmap for how to handle it. Joy stood up too, facing Leo across the table. She said, her voice trembling with rage, "You do not get to come on my show and talk to me like that. I have been doing this for decades. I have interviewed presidents, world leaders, activists. You are an actor, Leo. An actor who thinks making movies about problems is the same as solving them." Leo's laugh was bitter. "An actor? That is really what you are going with?" "Yes, Joy, I am an actor. I am also someone who has spent the last 20 years of his life working on environmental issues. I have met with world leaders. I have testified before the United Nations. I have funded scientific research. I have produced films that have changed public opinion and influenced policy. So yes, I am an actor, but I am also a lot more than that. What are you besides a talk show host who asks shallow questions?" Joy pointed her finger at him. "Get out. I mean it, Leo. Get off my set." Leo did not move. He said calmly, "This is not your set, Joy. This is The View's set. And unless Whoopi or the producers tell me to leave, I am staying. Because I came here to talk about something important, and I am not going to let you derail that just because you are embarrassed." Whoopi finally stood up, her voice authoritative. "Okay, everyone sit down. Right now. Both of you." She looked at Joy, then at Leo. "We are going to take a breath. We are going to be professional, and we are going to finish this conversation like adults. Sit down." There was a long pause. Leo sat down first, his jaw still clenched. Joy hesitated, then slowly lowered herself back into her chair. She would not look at him. Whoopi remained standing and said, "This got out of hand. We all know it, but we are not going to end it like this. Leo, you are right that we should be talking about your documentary and the issues it raises. Joy, you are right that public figures open themselves up to scrutiny. Can we find a middle ground here?" Leo took a deep breath and said, "I will find a middle ground if Joy admits that her question was designed to make me look bad, rather than to have a real conversation about solutions." Joy snapped her head toward him. "I will do no such thing. My question was legitimate, and you turned it into a personal attack." Leo shook his head. "Your question was an attack, Joy. It was designed to undermine my credibility from the start, and you know it." Sonny Hostin, clearly desperate to salvage something from this disaster, jumped in. "Leo, can we talk about the documentary itself? What do you hope people take away from it when they watch it?" Leo turned to her, his voice softening slightly. "Thank you, Sonny. What I hope people take away is an understanding of how interconnected everything is. When we destroy ocean ecosystems, we are not just hurting fish. We are hurting the entire food chain. We are hurting communities that depend on fishing for their livelihood. We are hurting the climate because healthy oceans regulate temperature. Everything is connected, and if we do not act now, with real policy changes and real enforcement, we are going to lose it all." Joy could not help herself. She muttered, just loud enough to be heard, "Easy to say when you will never personally suffer the consequences." Leo turned to her slowly. "What did you just say?" Joy met his eyes. "I said, it is easy for you to talk about sacrifice and urgency when you are insulated from all of it. You will never worry about losing your job because of environmental regulations. You will never have to choose between feeding your family and being eco-friendly. You live in a bubble, Leo, and you judge everyone else from inside that bubble." Leo's voice was ice cold now. "You think I live in a bubble? Joy, I have traveled to some of the most devastated places on Earth. I have seen communities destroyed by climate change firsthand. I have talked to people who have lost everything because of rising sea levels because of droughts, because of extreme weather. Do not tell me I am insulated. I see the consequences every single day. The difference between you and me is that I am actually trying to prevent more people from suffering those consequences. You are just trying to win an argument on daytime television. Joy slammed her hand on the table. That is enough. You are twisting everything I say. You are making me the villain here when all I did was ask you why you do not practice what you preach. Leo slammed his hand on the table too, matching her energy. Because what I preach is systemic change, Joy, not personal purity. I preach holding governments accountable. I preach regulating corporations. I preach investing in green technology. I do not preach that everyone should live like a monk. You are the one who keeps bringing it back to my personal life because you do not want to talk about the hard stuff. You do not want to talk about policy because policy is boring. Celebrity hypocrisy is fun. It gets clicks. It gets ratings. But it does not change anything. Whoopi raised both hands. All right, that is it. We are done with the personal attacks. This is not productive anymore. She looked directly at Leo. You made your point. You feel like Joy's question was unfair. You answered it. Can we please move forward? Leo took another deep breath, clearly trying to regain control. I can move forward, but I need Joy to understand something. I am not your enemy. The fossil fuel executives who spend millions lobbying against climate legislation, they are the enemy. The politicians who take their money and block every environmental bill, they are the enemy. I am someone who is trying to help, and if you keep attacking people like me, you are helping the other side. That is just a fact. Joy crossed her arms. I am not attacking you for caring about the environment, Leo. I am questioning whether you have the moral authority to lecture others when your own footprint is massive. That is a fair critique. Leo leaned back in his chair, his frustration still visible but more controlled now. My footprint is not massive compared to the people who are actually causing the problem, Joy. That is the point you keep missing. Yes, I use resources, but I also offset them. I also invest in solutions. The average billionaire uses far more resources than I do and contributes nothing back. Why are you not interviewing them and asking these questions? Joy shot back. Because they are not on my show talking about climate change. You are. You opened yourself up to this scrutiny the moment you decided to become an environmental activist. Leo shook his head slowly. So your logic is that I should just stay silent? I should make my movies, enjoy my success, and never speak out about the most important issue facing humanity because someone might call me a hypocrite? That is exactly what the polluters want, Joy. They want activists to shut up. They want anyone with a platform to be too afraid of criticism to speak out, and you are giving them exactly what they want. Joy's voice rose again. I am not falling for anything. I am holding you accountable. Someone has to. Leo's response was sharp. Accountable for what? For trying? For giving a damn? You want to hold someone accountable? Joy? Hold Exxon accountable for lying about climate science for 50 years. Hold politicians accountable for taking oil money. But do not sit here and pretend that grilling me about my carbon footprint is some kind of brave journalism. It is lazy and it is counterproductive. Joy could not resist adding, that is rich, coming from someone who just spent the last 20 minutes shaming me for asking questions. Leo's head snapped toward her. I did not shame you for asking questions, Joy. I called you out for asking bad questions, designed to undermine the conversation. There is a difference. Joy stood up abruptly. You know what? I am done. I am done with this interview. I am done with your condescension. Whoopi, I am out. She started to remove her microphone. Whoopi stood quickly. Joy, sit down. We are not doing this. Joy stopped but did not sit. She looked at Whoopi. He has been disrespectful from the moment I asked him a simple question. I do not have to sit here and take this. Leo also stood, facing Joy across the table again. Disrespectful? You have been disrespectful to me and to the work I do from the second I sat down. You did not invite me here to have a conversation. You invited me here to ambush me, and it backfired. So now you want to walk off because you did not get your viral moment the way you wanted it. Joy pointed at him again, her hand shaking slightly. My viral moment? You are the one who turned this into a circus. You could have just answered the question like a normal person, but instead you decided to attack me, attack this show, and attack our viewers. You are unbelievable. Leo's voice was deadly calm now. I attacked you because you attacked me first, and I will not apologize for defending myself or for defending the work I have dedicated my life to. You want me to be contrite? You want me to admit I am a hypocrite? It is not going to happen, Joy, because I am not a hypocrite. I am someone who is using every tool at my disposal to fight for a livable planet. And if that makes me arrogant in your eyes, I can live with that. Whoopi stepped between them, literally putting her body in the space to separate them. Okay, we are ending this now. This interview is over. Leo, thank you for coming. Joy, sit down and compose yourself. We are going to commercial. But Leo was not finished. He looked past Whoopi to Joy and said, one more thing. When your grandchildren ask you what you did during the climate crisis, what are you going to tell them? That you spent your time trying to tear down the people who were fighting for their future? Is that the legacy you want? Joy's eyes filled with tears, though whether from anger or hurt was impossible to tell. She said, her voice breaking, how dare you bring my grandchildren into this? You do not know anything about me or my family. Leo's voice softened just slightly, but his words remained pointed. You are right, I do not. But I know what kind of world they are going to inherit if we do not act. And I know that moments like this, where we argue about personal lifestyle instead of corporate malfeasance, are moments we can not get back. Time is running out, Joy. We do not have the luxury of these petty arguments anymore. Whoopi physically turned Leo toward the exit. That is enough. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your passion, but this needs to end now. Leo allowed himself to be guided, but kept his eyes on Joy. I meant what I said. I am not your enemy. Think about that. Joy finally sat down, wiping her eyes quickly. She did not respond. The other co-hosts sat in stunned silence as Leo walked off the set. What you just witnessed was one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history. Leonardo DiCaprio and Joy Behar both made valid points, but neither could find common ground. The real question is whose approach serves the climate movement better, and whether celebrity accountability helps or distracts from systemic change. Subscribe to this channel and comment below. If you were in that studio, whose side would you have been on? Joy's or Leo's?